Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Now NHL, local experts on the biggest stories on the ice. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. We've got our Locked On NHL host here to recap everything from Sunday, but we're going to head to Minnesota first for our biggest game.
The biggest game.
Wasn't necessarily a pretty game for the Wild, but they got that overtime victory, and that earns them a spot in the postseason. Locked On Wild has all you need to know about how Minnesota got it done.
It was far from pretty, but the Minnesota Wild put some more candy in everybody's Easter baskets by clinching a playoff spot. Hey, everybody, Seth Topal, host of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, recapping a 5-4 overtime win for the Minnesota Wild to pick up the last point they needed to punch their ticket to the Stanley Cup playoffs. 2-0 lead for the Wild, a not-so-nice goal given up by Marc-Andre Fleury to make it 2-1. And then the Sharks tied it. The Wild untied it at 3-2. The Sharks tied it at 3-3, then made it 4-3 San Jose. Wild tied it 4-4. And then the Kevin Fiala redirect to Jared Spurgeon for the game winner gives the Wild their 100th and 101st points on the season. Looks like Kevin Fiala was going to get his 30th goal, but nonetheless, a monster game for Fiala with a goal and 3 assists. Freddie Gaudreau had 3 assists, and Matt Boldy with a goal and an assist. The Fiala line feeling fine here in Minnesota. And so for the Wild, now the playoff spot officially clinched. Some things to work on, to say the least, heading into the playoffs. We'll talk about those on Locked On Wild here throughout the week. So if you are looking for more Minnesota Wild content, make sure you follow Locked On Wild wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Sharks are out of the playoff picture, and they are in the middle of an epic losing streak. Despite their best efforts on Sunday, they just couldn't get it done. Locked On Sharks goes over another loss.
The Sharks dropped their 10th straight game. I'm JD Young of Locked On Sharks, and the Sharks lose 5-4 in overtime to the Minnesota Wild, dropping their 10th straight game, something that hasn't been done since before Joe Thornton was a Shark. The Sharks played really well and took a very, very good Minnesota Wild team, outplayed them for large stretches of this game, but just, again, minor mistakes and unable to capitalize on some of their chances, and the Sharks drop their 10th straight. Thomas Borla made his debut, and I thought he looked really well, playing on the third line with Noah Gregor and Rudolph Balcers, earning himself a point. But again, the Sharks, they've been playing well against some really good teams recently, but just can't finish. So we'll break down Bordalo's debut, talk about the Sharks and kind of how they've been playing recently, and then look at the Tankathon standings and see where the Sharks can finish up this season on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Sharks, wherever you get your podcasts.
The Blues come through on the road to help maintain their lead in the Central. Locked On Blues has nothing but good things to say post-game.
The St. Louis Blues came away with a huge 8-3 victory over division rival Nashville Predators in the second night of a back-to-back. Jordan Kyrou had 2 goals. Braden Shen had 2 goals. And just as everyone suspected, Kale Rosen had 2 goals, including his first in a Blues uniform. The St. Louis Blues extend their point streak to 12 games and extend their win streak as well. Vladimir Tarasenko had a goal. Just a huge, huge win for the St. Louis Blues. They really emptied the tank yesterday against the Minnesota Wild in an overtime thriller. Tommy and I talked about it on the podcast that we really thought that there was a good chance the Blues lost this game just because of how intense Saturday's matchup against the Wild was inevitably going to be, and it was. But the Blues came out and impressed and put up 8 goals on the Nashville Predators' head. Overall, just a really, really fun game, and I'm excited to see what this team can do in the playoffs because right now they look absolutely unstoppable. Let's go Blues.
You're certainly not going to win a lot of hockey games when you allow 8 goals from an opponent. Locked On Predators has some serious questions after the blowout about whether Nashville is even capable of being a playoff team.
The Nashville Predators made history tonight in their game against the St. Louis Blues, and not in the good way. Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Kimmel from Locked On Predators. The Nashville Predators played the Blues in their second game in a home back-to-back, and Wow. Despite getting the first goal and ending the first period tied 1-1 against a very good St. Louis team, the Predators made franchise history by having the worst goals against period in the second. They allowed 7 goals. The final score tonight, 8-3. Predators fans began asking themselves two big questions in that second period. One, why did Coach Hines opt to start UC Saros in both games this weekend? Was fatigue a factor in that disastrous second period before pulling Saros and putting David Reddick in net? The second question is even more difficult to wrestle with. Is this team even capable of making the playoffs? They have a difficult April schedule, but you know what? At some point, you either play like a team who deserves to be in the postseason or you don't. Tonight, the Predators did not. Taking nothing away from, again, a very good St. Louis team. Tonight, the Predators played like they are prepared to wrap this all up April 29th with their last regular season game. The Predators team we're seeing in the final stretch of the season barely resembles the team whose stars were setting records. They were winning challenging games and playing consistent identity hockey. It was a very bad night at Bridgestone Arena, and this is very bad timing for the Nashville Predators.
Another game, another win for the Florida Panthers, this time on the road over the Red Wings. Locked On Panthers, pleased with another Cats victory.
A road win for the Florida Panthers makes it 10 wins in a row for the Cats. What is up, guys? This is Armando Velez from the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, and the Florida Panthers defeat the Detroit Red Wings by a final score of 6-1 on the road at Little Caesars Arena. This was a game where, since the All-Star break, the Florida Panthers were the team with the biggest goal differential per game, while the Detroit Red Wings had the worst goal differential since the All-Star break. So these are two teams going in opposite directions, and the Florida Panthers, even though they went scoreless in the first period, just scored 4 goals on 16 shots in the second period to break this game open. Spencer Knight was great in this one, going 33 of 34 in this one. Alexander Barkov, one of the 3 stars of the game, with 2 great assists, primary assists, mind you, one on a cross-ice pass to Anthony Duclair, who converts on a one-timer, and one as he drew a penalty on Moritz Seider, who's likely the Calder favorite, gets a drop pass to Anton Lundell, who gets in for a goal. And Anton Lundell, who was going against the opposition in Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond, even though he's not going to be in the conversation for the Calder Trophy with missing a little bit of time this season, Anton Lundell had a great game, having 2 goals in this one. So many Florida Panthers players got on the board in this one. Sam Reinhart also gets a goal in this one. Maxim Mammon and Gus Forsling also gets on the board in this one. Gus Forsling now has 7 goals in his last 9 games. So still an incredible pickup to this day by Bill Zito, getting Gus Forsling off waivers just last year from Carolina. So listen to my recap of this 6-1 win over the Detroit Red Wings. Make sure to listen to my latest episode on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Your first listen of the day.
The Sabres complete a season sweep over the Flyers on Sunday with a 5-3 win. Locked On Flyers details the continued struggles in Philly.
Hi, this is Rachel Donner with your Locked On Flyers post-game quick reaction to the Flyers' 5-3 loss to Buffalo, a 3-0 season sweep for the Sabres. In Saturday's game against the Sabres, the Flyers went up by 2 early, only to lose 4-3. Sunday started off very similarly, with the Flyers taking a 1-0 lead pretty early as well. This lead didn't hold, and the Flyers just could not create momentum shifts with sustained pressure or more energy after either Farabee scored the second goal to tie it up, and later after Zach McEwen cleaned up out front to bring the Flyers back to within 1 in the third period. I would say the other main issue, once again, for the Flyers was special teams, and specifically the power play. They were 0 for 6 on the power play this weekend. They could not tie it up Sunday with extended 6-on-5 time at the end of the game after they pulled Felix Sandstrom, who, by the way, did everything he could to keep the Flyers in the game, especially in the third period. very little has changed with the Flyers power play despite having some new personnel to draw from. And I would say the only noticeable upgrade is some faster puck movement from Bobby Brink when he's out there. But the overall setup continues to be pretty stationary, definitely ineffective, and you're not going to put yourself in a position to succeed or score goals that way. For more on this game and the Flyers all year round, tune in to the Locked On Flyers podcast.
Coming up, the Islanders are officially eliminated from playoff contention. This is Locked On Now NHL. Today's edition of Locked On Now is brought to you by Bet Online, the number one source for all of your online gambling needs. Definitely want to head over there now that baseball is back and underway. And of course, the NBA playoffs are certainly something you want to put some money on. Just head over to betonline.net. Welcome back to Locked On Now NHL. I'm Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Let's continue our look around the league with our local experts.
Let's go around the league.
The Ducks used 3 goals in the third period to beat the Blue Jackets, and Locked On Ducks tells you how the hottest names stayed hot to give Anaheim the win.
Hi, this is JD Hernandez live from Honda Center. Tonight's game was quite a game for Troy Terry and Ryan Getzlaf as the Anaheim Ducks win 6-4 at the Honda Center against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Troy Terry continuing his dominance with a 3-point night, and Ryan Getzlaf on the final chapter of his career. He had 2 points tonight, giving him career point total number 1,017. As for Troy Terry, goals number 35 and 36. And Trevor Zegras also picked up 2 points tonight, tying a franchise rookie record for most points in a season. Tune in to Locked On Anaheim Ducks tomorrow for more on this thrilling victory at the Honda.
After a loss to the Maple Leafs, the Islanders are officially eliminated from the chance of making the playoffs. Locked On Islanders breaks down the disappointing finish to the season.
Neil Martin of Locked On Islanders here. Islanders fall to the Maple Leafs by a score of 4-2. Not a terrible game for the Islanders. They killed off a 5-on-3 penalty at a key time. They went toe-to-toe with the Maple Leafs for really the first 2 periods, but at the end of the day, Toronto just has a little too much speed and a little too much talent. The Islanders did a good job of slowing down Toronto in the neutral zone for the first period, maybe period and a half, but then eventually Toronto just created just enough chances to win the game and to slow the Islanders down and get the scoring opportunities that they need. With this loss, the Islanders are officially eliminated from the playoffs, but there is still a lot to play for down the stretch, and we'll talk about all of that and more on the Locked On Islanders podcast.
That's all for today on Locked On Now NHL. Thank you so much for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you go and check out Locked On NHL and your team's Locked On podcast as well. I'm Kainani Stevens. This is Locked On Now.